had been a long, exasperating day for Edward as he backed down into the lively Tinmouth sheds. It was Christmas Eve, and a group of engines had come to celebrate the early festivities. He was happy to see new and old friends, but he couldn't have helped to notice someone was missing.
Where's Jem?
He asked Porter, sitting next to him. Oh, she's in the harbor.
Why ever so?
I don't know. She's been quiet recently. Porter's face grew worried. I've been worried for her. I know she doesn't like winter that much because, well, that happened around it,
Yes.
replied Edward, not quite understanding what the dark yard engine was talking about. It's the first time since I've been up here, but she seems to be ignoring me almost. I love Brendam, but I feel like I should be spending more time with Jem. He recoiled his statement, darting his eyes around to make sure no one had heard him slack off. Edward laughed at the little engine's antics.
How about I go check on her?
That'd be great. And so, Edward did. He left the sheds, swept over the main line, and went down to the harbor. It was a grand place, he thought to himself as he looked it over. He didn't know it that well, as well as some of the engines that resided in it. He had only talked to Jem from the passing conversation, but never fully. He knew one thing, though. The Tinmouth fire of 61.
That's how she got that scar,
he murmured to himself as he saw the engine shed. It was dark and seemingly empty except for the little diesel shunter that lurked in it. Edward smiled heartily as he approached.
I'm not intruding, am I?
Jem had been in thought and looked up to find Edward. She smiled back. Come on in, she invited. To Edward, it sounded reluctant. The sheds didn't seem that welcoming either. He could easily tell she didn't want attention at this moment. Edward quickly turned around on the nearby turntable and reversed next to her.
Lovely night,
Jem glanced around. She grunted.
How's your day been?
It's been, alright.
Just alright.
He watched as Jem's little face scrunched up. Her eyebrows twitched from the question. She thought for a moment. She didn't know him well, but she knew he was trustworthy. She decided. I don't like Christmas.
You don't?
Nah, not really my thing. I mean, of course, I love spending time with friends, but I don't care for all the religious baloney. Not to say I don't like religion, but,
Understandable. Although I'm a Catholic, that doesn't mean that I agree with my faith.
Wait, you're religious?
Yes.
Edward, I mean no offense, but do you not hear how silly that sounds?
What do you mean?
You're a talking train.
Engine.
Yeah, whatever. We're engines. Why shouldn't an engine believe in some higher entity?
Why should an engine believe in Christmas?
See? You agree.
Perhaps so, but that doesn't mean I can't believe.
Huh?
Well, sometimes, back when I first came to Sodor, I had to father Thomas. I was the only engine there to take care of him. I had my fair share of ups and downs. A lot of deep ups and downs. Dark places as well. Thomas helped me out a huge ton with it, but...
I'm sorry, but a god did not direct your life. You yourself made your own path. You carved and shaped it into who you are now.
And you're right. I did. But in my times of losing sanity, I always found myself drifting back to a religion. I hoped, sometimes even wished, that something could help me out. I believed that, well, as you put it, a higher deity would pull me out of my rut.
And who helped you out? Thomas, the Fact Controller?
Director. And sometimes, yes, and other times, no. Sometimes it would just come naturally.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to question your beliefs. I'm just upset at other things.
Oh, you're fine. Now, Jem, what's got you in your rut?
Jem sighed a long and heavy sigh. People are always forcing something onto you. They're always forcing the beliefs and whatnot down your radiator. But sometimes, it's not just that. I never had a childhood. I had to take Porter under my buffers as soon as I started. We kind of went along and learned together, but I never had help. Sure, Duck tried to show me the ropes, but he was always pulled to the yards. It was just me and Porter. My driver back then called it, teen pregnancy, whatever that means. I just feel like I had to act parental when I wasn't ready for it myself. She paused. She paused for a long, long time. Edward sat patiently, waiting for her to continue. I don't like being an adult, she wept at last. Her little mascara was dripping down her face. That's why I try to be bliss. I try to have fun. I try to act like a kid. I know I still am, but it feels like I've grown up too quickly. And that's why I've lost my vision. Her voice fell flat as she looked onto the mismatched massive piece of concrete that lay far away in the harbor. Her scar-red eyes seemingly winced in pain at the sight of it. She instead turned her vision to Edward, waiting for what he was going to say. His brow had stiffened greatly. He was concerned for her.
I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to deal with that so young. But what about the Lone Harbor engines at the time? Why couldn't they have helped?
And if Porter had fallen into the buffers of the others, he would have ended up like them, He would be dead. She was stern now. She didn't like to think what could have happened to him. She drew a great breath, trying to recompose herself. Besides, he was a misfit from them. I had to parent him. No one else would. He was an experiment. There's a reason why he and his sister look so different from each other. Edward sighed before tethering. What? What did I say?
Oh, nothing. I sympathize with having to deal with kids.
He reminisced, thinking about the good old days of when Thomas would try to escape the station yards and try to start fights with the other engines.
I had to parent Thomas for a while, and I thought that was dreadful at times. And you would think that when you've dealt with Thomas, that any other engine was a saint, until Bill and Ben came along. It began with Bill. His brother came a year later, and they are quite a troublesome bunch. I thought I could handle them just like I had Thomas. I tried all my tricks and techniques, but I just couldn't get to them, I thought. Sometimes you have to change your outlook on things and think about how to handle them. Think differently in a situation. Think about your faith and what you believe and don't. Think about your troubled past and what good came of it. Think about your future and what's in store. And think about the festivities you're missing out on.
Jem smirked at the final suggestion before faltering again. But what if I don't like thinking? I mean, I don't want to think about what could have happened to Porter. I don't like thinking about the loaned engines, and I especially don't want to think about some religious nonsense.
And that's okay. You are your own being. You're allowed to have your own opinions and thoughts. It's sometimes the hand we're dealt with that we need to take into consideration. Those are really how our paths are carved. And I say both of ours have come out pretty well, have they not?
Edward looked on at the grand harbor of Teignmouth standing before him. Jem followed his gaze. It felt different this time. It was all striking in a way. She had seen this place millions of times for almost every day in her life. But this time, it seemed fresh. From all her life moments, her ups and downs, and her ruts, she felt new. She looked on at the mixed-match colored cement. Her scar didn't hurt her now.
Now, you don't have to come. I'm not forcing you by any means. But I do know an entire shed that would love to see you there.
Jem smiled. I may take you up on that offer.